Hey guys, it's Mina. During this time of social isolation with no games to watch, ESPN Podcasts is still churning out a ton of new content from all of your favorite shows. Last week, there were new episodes of ESPN Daily, that's my podcast, The Low Post, The Woj Pod, Sports with Katie Nolan, The Bill Barnwell Show, Ariel Helwani's MMA show, wow, this is a long list, Stupidity, Baseball Tonight, and more. You can listen to all of these and other podcasts wherever you get your pods. Welcome to the Mina Show, featuring Lenny, the only NFL podcast where one of the hosts fetched a ball with his mouth and had Joe Buck do play-by-play. Let's listen, folks.
All right, our friend Mina Kimes has sent in a video. Okay, here we go. Let's go. 17 seconds of unadulterated fun. A person, I don't think that's Mina, throwing the ball, scraps the dog, goes and retrieves it, and now is doing the, I'm not going to bringing it back, and awfully happy and proud of the work that Scraps has done, and that's it. I'm sure that's happened thousands of times with this dog, with that hand, with that ball, on that deck, around that table. Well done, Mina. Thanks for the video.
Bill Barnwell, what do you think?
I'm just so happy to see Joe Buck so happy to just do random videos for people on the internet. What a time.
Okay, a lot of thoughts, obviously. First of all, Scraps. I told Joe Buck Lenny's name, but I kind of respect him giving Lenny his own, like, it's a very play-by-play thing to do, right? To, like, make a nickname happen. And, look, if his interpretation of Lenny is that he is a white slot receiver, fine. I did feel like he kind of picked up momentum as it went on, right? Like by the end of it, when he said it, it happened so many times, I was a little moved, honestly. And he was right. It has happened many times.
Do you think Joe Buck just doesn't have a dog and so he calls all dogs Scraps, like in like a condescending kind of way?
Do you think Lenny looks like a Scraps? If you're listening, tell us. No, not a Scraps.
My only interaction with Lenny, I think I've met Lenny.
You've met him a couple times.
Every time I've met Lenny, he has seen me and then proceeded to jump at me as high as possible. Like, the videos you post where like he is leaving the, he's leaving the pet resort. Sorry, I don't want to call it a pet hotel, but a resort. He does that to me every time he sees me for the entirety of the time I'm around him. So I see him as someone with a great vertical. I don't see him as a scrappy slot receiver. I see him as a luxurious downfield receiver.
He's a straight up X. Yeah. So you're right. I will say Joe Buck spelled Scraps with a Z. He doubled down on it because people on Twitter were like, that's not his name, not Scraps. And Joe Buck responded, I don't know why. He's one of those people you have to say his full name. Scraps, it's Lenny Scraps Kimes. Duh, look it up, which I, again, respect the doubling down. And he spelled it with a Z, which, fun fact, another piece to Lenny's origin story, his original name was Taz with a Z.
Who gave him that name?
Someone in Alabama. I don't know. Lenny's listeners to the show know that Lenny's from Alabama. So, I don't know. Joe Buck tapped into something there. I don't like it when I used to go crazy. My husband would say Taz sometimes just to mess with me, and I would be so upset at the idea of Lenny, like his ears perking up and him remembering his old life.
I hate that. My foster, so my dog is named Maggie, not as frequent of a contributor to my show, the Bill Barnwell Show, but her original name, or her name in the foster where we got her from, was May. So Maggie kind of plays off that, Maggie May.
Oh.
So her foster mom occasionally calls her May, and I'm like, no. It is Maggie now. It's changed.
Well, speaking of people moving on to new homes, the Carolina Panthers have released Cam Newton. And another important piece of news, Adam Schefter reported that Cam they facilitated a physical. I think the Panthers and his agents did. Mm-hmm. He's all healthy, but obviously teams aren't able to see that firsthand right now. And I think it's undeniable that Cam's health has played into all of this, right? I mean, the fact that the Bears traded for notoriously healthy Nick Foles instead of waiting for Carolina to release Cam. And by the way, the people have brought up the Kyle Allen thing, that the fact that Washington traded a fifth for Kyle Allen. To me, the Nick Foles trade is far more relevant to Cam, because Washington, I don't think they actually wanted competition for Haskins. They wanted a true backup. They wanted a cheap backup, which you get in Kyle Allen. Cam Newton and Nick Foles are neither of those things. Cam might be at this point. And so Chicago would have been the team that could have waited and gotten Cam for significantly less than Nick Foles.
I think just the fact that there was a tweet within 2 hours of the Nick Foles trade that was like, yeah, just Cam gets hurt too much. Can't do it when Nick Foles has lasted like 8 games in his career without breaking a bone. It was just a little too on the nose, I think it's fair to say. But yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting offseason for guys who have injury histories. Jadeveon Clowney is another classic example, right? Where a guy who has not been able to get his medical records or get updated medical records to teams. And so a market that might have existed for him under a more normal society just does not exist right now, because teams aren't going to commit that much money to a guy who might not have, great medicals underneath the uniform. So it's obviously not the biggest impact of what's happening right now, but certainly one of the, more realistic impacts of how it's impacting the NFL and impacting free agency.
Yeah. And I think with Clowney too, teams might be spooked by the fact that, Seattle apparently hasn't gone all in, right? And who would know his physical condition better than the team that's had him the last year?
We're going to talk about Seattle.
We're doing free agency winners and losers. And I did the coward's move of putting a few teams in. I don't really know, and I was going to wait and see how you characterize them. Very curious to see where you put Seattle. We'll get to that. But sticking to Cam for a second. So once, this musical chairs game amongst the quarterbacks ends, or at least it's coming to an end, there's really only like a couple teams that realistically are destinations for him and Jameis Winston at this point. That's the Chargers, who have said they're rolling with Tyrod Taylor. I don't think anyone necessarily believes them, but it does seem highly plausible that they're just going to draft a rookie. They have a 6th overall pick. They probably have to trade up for Tua. All of that's, things that could happen. Or New England. And Bill Belichick, it's possible, has played this whole thing perfectly, because now he has the choice of these 2 quarterbacks. Yeah, shocking turn of events. Bill Belichick played this perfectly. Do you see Cam or Jameis ending up in New England, Bill? And which would you prefer?
Okay, can I throw a third name in there?
Andy Dalton.
Dalton. Because that is, I would rule Jameis out. I just cannot imagine Jameis Winston coming to the sideline after a pick 6 and just the camera panning on Bill Belichick. And
I want it so badly.
But then again, I couldn't believe Tom Brady would be wearing a Buccaneers uniform, and yet here we are. So you can't rule anything out, I suppose, at the right price. But I think there are reasons to think that Cam could work in New England. They have typically favored bigger quarterbacks. Cam is a specimen, like a physical specimen when it comes to his size and strength. He is someone who has a pretty significant upside. I mean, this is a guy who was formerly league MVP. They have taken risks on players who have injury histories in their past, and Cam, does have an injury history. And I don't think there's going to be a big price tag, just because, to your point, it's the Patriots, the Chargers, and maybe the Jags, if the Jags want to try and upgrade on Gardner Minshew, who it seems like they're kind of attached to. So, I mean, there's just not a lot to work with here in terms of possible landing spots. So it wouldn't shock me if Cam took a 1-year deal for, less than $10 million. I would be surprised if he got anything more than that at this point. And the same thing is true with Andy Dalton, where I don't think there's a big trade market for him. If the Patriots want to offer a 7th round pick and get Dalton to restructure his deal, that wouldn't be out of the question. But there's just going to be there's going to be the Patriots sort of picking between the guys they want at something close to the price they want. So I could absolutely buy that at the right price, the Patriots would consider Cam Newton. I just think that price tag was not going to line up with what the Patriots had to offer before he was cut.
Yeah. At this point, you might be, well, so Andy Dalton Wait, he's got a year left on his deal, right?
He has 1 year and like 16, 17 million ish, but he can also restructure that deal.
He could, but like Cam might be cheaper.
I think he will be.
Wow, what a turn of events. I think I'll say this. The one thing that gives me reservations about Cam, so I agree with you about the upside, the size, the fact that Bill Belichick clearly would love, running the wing tee or whatever we were joking about last week with Cam. But there are a lot of people in the know with New England stuff who seem pretty skeptical of it. So I really think it could go either way. I also think when it comes to him and Andy, I think Cam gives you more upside. Obviously, you'd be playing a different style of football, but I don't think there's a huge discrepancy based on how they've played over the last few years, right? And obviously, Cam comes with those injury concerns. We also have seen Andy Dalton play at a MVP level in 2015. Now, Andy Dalton has shown that to play at that level, he needs everything around him to be perfect, and I do not think that's the case in New England right now. So, to me, given the variance you're going to get, I would prefer for them to go with Cam, but I wouldn't be surprised if they don't do that. So it's very interesting. I didn't put New England on my winners or losers because I wanted to wait to see kind of how that shakes out before I come to a conclusion on that. But I'm curious to see who yours are. So let's get to it. Let's start. Let's do what?
I have one more question. So if Cam does not go to the Patriots, where do you think he goes?
I still think the Chargers make sense, but again, they seem like they don't want to do that. But how, at a certain point, if you're the Chargers, how can you say no if it's so little money, right?
And Tyrod has no guaranteed money left in his deal.
Yes.
So would you, and we are both avowed, acknowledged, card-carrying Tyrod stans here.
My God.
But, like, relatively, you would rather have Cam than Tyrod.
Yes, certainly.
So
I mean, they could roll with 3 quarterbacks easily.
Also true.
Yeah. I again, if Cam Newton is coming in at like you said, under 10 million or even less, and if I'm Cam, by the way, I don't want to be a backup. I want to prove that I'm healthy. So I you know what? Let's use this as a transition because I have the Chargers as a winner in free agency. Even though they're still kind of a TBD, right, with the quarterback situation. And I think they're an excellent destination for a quarterback right now. If I'm Cam Newton, I would love to go to the Chargers. So I'll start there, Bill, because they're my first winner. I'm very curious to see what you said because I've seen all your grades and we have some different opinions.
Oh, really?
Well, okay. So for those who read Bill Barnwell's grades, I feel like everyone thinks when you say like C+, that's really bad. Can you explain to people your grading system?
Okay. Very, very intense grading system here. So here's the thing. I don't know if you know this, Mina, but free agency tends to not work out well for the team in question. Unless you're the Bills. The Bills somehow manage to sign like 10 free agents every year and they all turn into good players. Otherwise, it is a mess. So a C+ is kind of an average deal. Let's say if you're paying for a top of the market guy, like a Tyrann Mathieu, for example. If you sign Tyrann Mathieu to
no, my slash just went out. Keep it. Keep it. No worries. Keep going.
If you sign Tyrann Mathieu to like a top 2 safety deal and he plays like a top 2 safety deal, that's fine, but you got what you paid for. You didn't get like some bargains. That's about an average deal because you got about what you were expecting. So a C+ is about average. If you get a pretty good grade, and I think I gave 3 A's this year. And
by the way, I was surprised you gave the Bucs an A for the Brady deal.
Why?
I don't want to get into it. We talked too much Brady on this podcast. I don't know. I read your write-up and I was like, he doesn't really think this is an A. I felt like
you know me better than I know myself.
The Brady industrial complex got to you. Tune in for more of our Tom Brady coverage on ESPN. But no, I agree with you about free agency, of course. And I will say, by the way, I was part of we do these insiders roundtable thingies. And one of the questions on this last one was, what was the worst signing in free agency? And, there's some bad, like the Jimmy Graham deal, which I'll get to, the George Fant deal, which I'll get to. There's some kind of goofy ones. But by and large, Bill, this is a pretty modest free agency, right? Like there weren't that many shock and awe terrible deals when I look across the whole landscape.
There wasn't, and here's why. I think in part it's because we saw the vast majority of players not get those sort of 5-year deals where you get the really lofty numbers. And the reason why that happened was because we saw a lot of players who, sort of similar to the NBA a few years ago, are taking 2-year deals and 3-year deals, and really not many deals more than 3 years in this class. A couple guys here and there, like the DeForest Buckner deal, but mostly those guys are taking shorter deals because they want to hit free agency one more time when the NFL has negotiated their TV rights, which are coming up depending on what happens with the world next year, in which case the salary cap could rise dramatically because the NFL is expecting a massive increase in terms of the salary cap after those deals are signed. So a lot of guys who maybe could have got a 5-year deal and, added 2 more years of unguaranteed money to their deals, took 3-year contracts. So the contracts didn't seem quite as big as maybe they would be otherwise.
So speaking of those 2 and 3-year contracts, the Chargers signed Chris Harris, cornerback from the Broncos, for 2 years, $20.5 million. And then Brian Bulaga, Packers right tackle, 3 years, 30 off the top of my head. They kept Hunter Henry. They have guys coming back like Nasir Adderley. But let's focus on that, the defense first, actually. Mm-hmm. So this is one of those deals where I think I liked it more than you. Was one of the deals was the Chris Henry. Jeez, I'm like struggling to talk. Chris Henry. It's the Hunter Henry, and I'm doing the Stephen A. The Chris Harris deal, he wasn't great last year, and he is on the wrong side of 30. But I think taking him and putting him in this absurd secondary, right? And you've got Nasir Adderley coming back, who I mentioned ostensibly. He'll be at free safety. It'll be actually, it's funny. I was looking at all the players in the secondary, Bill, between James, Henry, Desmond King, who's played all over. He played various positions, Harris, and then of course Hayward, trying to figure out, okay, exactly where to put them. And there's so many different combinations. Like, this is the closest you're going to get to sort of that positionless basketball secondary, where, of course, you remember the Chargers notoriously rolling out the 7 DB strategy for that Ravens game, but they do play a lot more dime than other teams in the NFL. And right now they just have so many pieces that I'm fascinated to see how they deploy them. And I really like this approach to team building. Here's
the problem, though, Mina. Whenever the Chargers sign somebody, I build in like a 30% chance they're going to suffer a critically career-threatening injury within 6 months of joining the team.
I want to believe.
I know you want to believe. And I think the
I'm
Chris
ready
Harris
to get hurt again.
You are going to, unfortunately. That's what the Chargers do to you. I mean, yes, more so their players than you, but also you. I mean, it's on paper an awesome team. And I think with the Chris Harris deal, it's not a deal I would love. I'm always skeptical of older cornerbacks. They really, really, really tend to struggle. I mean, the famous Seahawks one, of course, is the Kerry Williams deal. I don't think it's going to be like that, but it's just, you're paying Chris Harris not top level money. This had been $15 million a year. It would have been a disastrous signing. With this deal, it's more like, I could kind of see it going south in year 2. I'm fine with it in year 1.
They could cut him, by the way.
They can.
After year 1, too. Yeah. That's another, yeah.
Oh, that helps. I like the Linval Joseph signing more than the Chris Harris deal, where they're adding a nose tackle who's still really effective, not necessarily like a great pass rusher on the interior, but a very solid run defender, someone who's going to make life easier for Joey Bosa and Melvin Ingram, who's going to occupy guards, going to help them when they come on twists. I think a really underrated player. And, there's issues here at linebacker, I guess, but I mean, overall, this is a great team on paper, but we know how the Chargers look on paper.
Oh, and the Bulaga deal, by the way, I like it because, granted, he has an injury history, and I think that's built into this. But I think its value is just its value. Like the 3 or $30 million. The fact that George Fant got the same amount of money,
it's ridiculous.
It's just so hard to evaluate it independently from that. But I do think this Chargers offensive line is going to be way better next year. With Trey Turner and Bulaga. And I wouldn't be surprised. Again, we'll see what they do in the draft, but I wouldn't be surprised if they hit tackle as well.
Well, that's the question, right? So if let's say they sign Cam, they can use the 6th pick on a left tackle. That's not out of the question.
Well, we'll talk about the draft a lot. I mean, my general feeling has been, unless you can get Burrow or Tua, I would not reach. I would rather take a tackle and roll with Cam, but that's a whole other conversation. All right, give us another winner. Let's stay positive for now.
Another winner. I'll go with the Bills, because the Bills are always winners, right? I mean, I didn't love all the moves individually. Like, I think the Vernon Butler move, even though he's an ex-Panther and Sean McDermott is signing every ex-Panther he can, was not ideal, a little too much, but I love the idea of adding just a ton of defensive line depth. You're signing Quentin Jefferson, who's underrated. Mario Addison, who's super, super underrated. You get AJ Klein at linebacker to replace Lorenzo Alexander, who's just the perfect fit for what they need in terms of a 2-down linebacker. And then on top of that, the Stephon Diggs trade is risky, but I like the risk. Like, I think you have to try and take some shots. And this is a chance to get a guy who was 3rd in the NFL in yards per route run last year, a guy who's on has 4 years left in his contract at a pretty reasonable price, a guy who, are there going to be those moments where he gets furious at Josh Allen? Yes, that is going to happen. But I kind of trust Sean McDermott to handle those situations better than Mike Zimmer does. And, if it ends up failing, I still think it's a worthwhile risk given what they paid, which is not, the Cardinals level bargain, but still like a pretty reasonable price for a number 1 receiver. And then I think on top of all that, it also means you have a better idea of where you are with Josh Allen, because there's no excuses. Josh Allen has everything he could possibly want right now.
Yeah. If he can't thrive with this set of weapons, I think you kind of have your answer about him, right? I mean, Josh Allen, actually, there's a mailbag question that gets at what we're discussing. So I'm going to hold off this conversation about sort of Allen and the offense. But, one of my concerns with the Bills was great defenses tend to regress. They're more likely to regress than great offenses. But when I look at the pieces that the Bills have lost, I'm not like, yes, some of these players could regress a bit. And, losing Shaq Lawson and Jordan Phillips, there's some pieces. But by and large, I think the additions of those defensive linemen you mentioned, Quentin Jefferson is incredibly underrated, by the way. He was excellent in Seattle. I think should alleviate a fair amount of that. So I think they did a good job of addressing both, their getting the best player, one of the best players available in Diggs, and also kind of bolstering their defense to the point where there's not too many needs going into the draft, right? Because you want to hit needs in free agency so you can go after the best players in the draft. I also think, they can really go after defense there. I think I wouldn't be surprised if one of their first picks is on like a linebacker or something. And McDermott finally gets that Bobby Wagner type that he really, I have to look at the draft and look at what they're picking, but I really like what they did. I agree. I think this team is just so well built and so well constructed. We'll talk about them a bit more later. So,
give me a loser from your
list.
list.
Let's go to losers now. Okay. Okay.
And don't do the Texans, because that's a cop out.
Yeah. Okay. I don't, it's funny because this one's a little bit nuanced. I don't hate everything that the Jets that the Jets did. I actually looked at all their contracts and I was like, you know what? I love this Brian Poole signing. $5 million? Sure. Connor McGovern? Sorry.
I gave 3 signings in A: Tom Brady, Phillip Rivers, and Brian Poole.
Just a natural peer group right there.
It's a natural third person.
Connor McGovern, fine. But when you look at some of the losses, and these aren't guys I necessarily thought they had to bring back, but like Robbie Anderson, I just don't feel like this is a team that had a lot of cap space, right? And I don't feel like they what we just described that the Bills are doing for Josh Allen, where they can evaluate him. I do not feel that the Jets did that for Sam Darnold. And I still feel like you can't really evaluate him because it's going to be a terrible offensive line. There's the George Fant deal, which we've discussed. And as of now, he does not have weapons. So with the Jets, to me, it's more of a frustration about sort of the lack of action when they had opportunity. I
mean, they have to address wide receiver in the draft, right? Like there's no other way they can avoid it.
Yeah. I would say so.
But yeah, they're on my list here too. I just think
Rashad Perriman's still out there too.
Yeah, I mean, but they have they wanted to solve their offensive line this year, and right now they're heading into the draft with probably the worst tackle situation in the league with Fant and Greg Van Roden or Chuma Edoga. They re-signed Alex Lewis, who was the guy they got off, basically off the waiver wire. They traded a 7th rounder for him last year and he was okay. And now they're paying him like he's a starting guard. They're probably 32nd at tackle, 32nd at wide receiver, and mid-20s at tight end. It's really not pretty. And they're almost damned if they do, damned if they don't. Like, I could see if you're a Jets fan saying, hey, we spent all this money last year and you panned us for it. Now we're not spending money and you're panning us for that too. But how do you evaluate Sam Darnold? Like, how do you know if he's any good?
You can't. Exactly. Like, if Sam Darnold and Josh Allen switched positions, I don't know where that thought is right. I just think he is being set up to fail. And, I love Sam Darnold, so I feel bad for him. All right. Who's your next loser? Who's your first loser?
First loser. Should we do the Seahawks now?
Let's do it now. Rip the Band-Aid. Because you know what? I do not agree, Bill Barnwell.
That's your problem. I'm clearly they're,
did you make this before the Quentin? I just wanted to. Yes, I did. I like the Quentin Dunbar trade. We talked about it. It's great. It's a win. Okay. Tell us what you didn't like.
That is a win. Here's
Huge
the problem.
Win.
Here's the problem.
Massive.
Everything else is bad. Pretty much everything else is bad. So you're the offensive line. You have signed BJ Finney, who I think is an okay utility lineman and okay interior guy. They signed Chance Warmack, who was out of football last year, and they're talking about him like he's going to be a starter, which is not a good sign.
They
for
always
a guy.
Do this.
Yeah, I'm very skeptical that is the case. They signed Brandon Shell, if I'm not mistaken, who was the Jets right tackle last year, who was a below average right tackle, who's sort of like a poor man's Jermaine Ifedi, which is not.
No, I do not agree with that. He is not worse than Ifedi.
I
have looked into this.
That is what I heard about Luke Jokel when the Seahawks signed Luke Jokel.
You could say it's not a massive upgrade, Bill, and I would support that hypothesis, but based on what I've seen, I do not think he's worse.
Okay, we will see.
He's also like half as many penalties, but
he's better with not getting penalties. But Ifedi is a good run blocker. I'm not sure Shell is that's true. I'm not sure Shell is a good run blocker. Cedric Ogbuehi is maybe the worst signing in the NFL this offseason. He got $1.6 million guaranteed. Mina, I realize that Bengals fans are not exactly a very loud contingent of the internet. Ask a Bengals fan about Cedric Ogbuehi. He is one of the worst regular offensive linemen in football. It's 1.6 million up to 3.3 million. Why are you guaranteeing Cedric Ogbuehi anything? And then on the defensive side of the ball, they had to upgrade their pass rush and they've done nothing. I mean, adding Bruce Irvin is okay, but he's not better than Jadeveon Clowney. The Jerron Reed deal was not good. It's 2 years of guarantees with nothing afterwards. So you're basically paying him for the next 2 years and then you have to let him hit the market again. They haven't added anybody in terms of depth there. Am I missing somebody who they've added on the defensive line?
Bruce Irvin.
That's it though. Like Bruce Irvin's a downgrade on Clowney, a pretty comfortable downgrade on Clowney.
Well, look, if they do not bring back Clowney or add, I don't know, Griffin still out there in Ngakoue, I'm with you. That is a deplorable pass rush. Yes. I think the jury's still they still have money, so there's still an open question. Reed, I agree. I don't like the 2-year deal. He took a major step back last year from the previous year in which he was excellent. So we'll see. Maybe they've got some insight into that. I love the Quentin Dunbar deal. Absolutely love it. I think I haven't seen what they just signed Philip Dorsett. I haven't seen. It was a trade, right? I haven't seen.
No, he signed him a 1-year deal.
What is the money?
Don't know what the money is yet. I think you're looking for Adam Schefter. I'm Bill Barnwell. I don't know what the money is.
If that's cheap, then you're looking at in terms of
it'll be like $3 million, I guess.
Yeah, I know. So in terms of that, and Greg Olson also they signed I think that's fine.
That's
that
not
wasn't
a positive for me.
What? Just 1 year, $7 million. It's fine.
That's a lot of money for a dude who is. I mean, he's a great commentator. Looks to be a sweetheart of a human being.
He was fine last year. He was fine.
Look,
there's no crazy. I think they have not done enough. You're right, and pass rush is still a major issue. But I absolutely love the Dunbar signing. I think it was he's their best cornerback now. Quintel Moore.
You think he's better than Griffin?
I do. I do.
Really?
I thought Quintel Moore, listeners to the show, remember our 2 episodes ago with Greg Rosenthal, I was talking about how good he was. We'll see what happens. You and I talked about whether or not they might try to, I was saying I hope they'll see how he looks mid-year perhaps and sign him to an extension then. And obviously they'll have to factor in what they end up doing with Griffin. But I love that signing. I also just, I really wanted them to target the secondary in free agency, and not rely solely on the draft. So I was pleased that they did that. I agree. Like, I don't know why they didn't sign Brian Bulaga. That would have been my wish.
Yeah.
So to me, the biggest issues is that they did not address the offensive line and that they have not yet addressed the pass rush. But, you know, when I look across, like, I don't see when I look across the league, like, you know, they didn't sign like the Melvin Gordon to $16 million or Jimmy Graham to 2 years. Like, there's nothing tragic going on here. And there's a couple signings I really like. Speaking of tragic, we have to take a quick break, but we'll come back with some questions from you guys. Is there something that's interfering with your happiness or preventing you from achieving your goals? If so, BetterHelp Online Counseling is there for you. BetterHelp offers licensed professional counselors who are specialized in issues such as depression, stress, anxiety, relationships, sleeping, trauma, self-esteem, and more. Connect with your professional counselor in a safe and private online environment. Anything you share is confidential, and it's so convenient. Get help at your own time and at your own pace. You can schedule secure video or phone sessions, plus chat and text with your therapist. If you are not happy with your counselor, you can request a new one at any time at no additional charge. Best of all, it's a truly affordable option, and listeners get 10% off your first month with the discount code Mina. So why not start today? Go to betterhelp.com/Mina. Simply fill out a questionnaire to help them assess your needs and get matched with a counselor you'll love. BetterHelp.com/Mina.
Question. Lenny, for your thoughts.
As always, thank you for your lovely questions that I've found on my iTunes page. We are almost caught up, by the way. So if you leave a question there, you will hear it answered very soon. And taking questions about free agency, whatever you like. First question. This is the one I was teasing earlier when we were talking about the Bills, which sort of gives away my thought. Kyle Hartlob asked, let's say there's 32 Patrick Mahomes and every team has one. Who wins the Super Bowl? So, Bill, I think there's 2 teams that come to mind. 3, actually. Pardon me. The Niners, the Saints, and the Bills. What are your thoughts?
Do you think this question was thrown at you as like an indirect way to get you to insult Josh Allen?
I have been so nice about it. I don't know. You know what? And I compliment the Bills so much on this. I am constantly raving about that organization. I will say, though, I think Bills fans would agree that team would be a Super Bowl caliber team with Pat Mahomes.
Of course. I think a lot of teams are Super Bowl caliber teams with Patrick Mahomes.
Who has the best chance?
Who has the best chance? I would say I might say the Steelers have the best chance one with Patrick Mahomes.
You think, though, more than the Bills and Niners?
Steelers are better in defensive DVOA than the Bills last year. They were about the same as the Niners. And I think, like, people don't realize, like you know, the offense was bad for the Steelers last year. It was like several degrees worse than everybody else in football when it came to the second half of that season. So I might go Steelers. Yeah.
It's a fun answer. Is there a team in the NFL where if you added Patrick Mahomes, they still would not be a contender? Let's flip it.
Have you heard about the New York Giants?
Are they on your list?
They're not on my list this year, actually. They had a couple bad moves, but I sort of like the Bradbury move was fine. Like they,
yeah, I thought they were too hard on that. Like I understand. I think he's good. I didn't think he would get that kind of money, but he's not a bad football player.
He's a good quarterback, and like he got probably a little more than he's worth. But like the Leonard Williams thing is terrible. But like I already knew it was terrible. It's a sunk cost. Yeah, the Giants, I think, because they'd want to still build the offense around Saquon Barkley, even if they had Patrick Mahomes. Do you think the Dolphins would be a Super Bowl contender with Patrick Mahomes?
With Mahomes? And all the players that they've added and the draft picks, because if they have Mahomes, they don't have to get a quarterback.
Yeah, I think they'd be.
I think they'd be there. He's so good. All right. John Thunder wants to know, what position would Lenny play? Well, we kind of already addressed this at the top of the show.
I feel like we already hit all these questions before we even got to the mailbag.
People ask what position would Lenny play like once a month. And you know what? I don't mind. Yeah, I've always thought he had kind of a DB personality. Although the way you described him, you kind of made him sound like a pass rusher.
Yeah, I feel like that. What outside of football, what sport do you think Lenny would be most interested in playing?
He's got like short burst skills, not great endurance. Maybe wrestling?
I could see that.
100-yard dash.
I was thinking maybe like laser tag.
I'm so good at laser tag. Uncharacteristically. Evan wants to know, which team do we think has had the best first-round picks over the last few years? Evan discloses that he is a Bills fan and mentions that they've had good picks in White, Edmonds, Josh Allen, and Ed Oliver.
3 out of 4 ain't bad.
No. I agree. I'm glad that Bills fans like this show. Okay. Back to the matter at hand.
Wait, do we have to answer the question though?
Yeah. I'm thinking of, the Niners have had some good picks.
Yeah. I would say the Niners are up there.
Saints until, Marcus Davenport was good. It's more the fact that what they traded. Probably, who did the Saints pick this year? Did they not have one? Am I brain fart?
They didn't have one, I don't think.
Okay, well, before that,
but their first pick was Eric McCoy, who was really good. He was like
great,
a rookie of the year candidate.
Saints have really good drafts.
Trying to think.
Given that the Niners have Buckner, no longer Bosa, feel like it's a pretty
Chiefs
solid.
Haven't had a first round pick in a couple of years, but they had Mahomes, and they've had one first round pick in the last 4 years. The Chiefs' last 2 first round picks were Patrick Mahomes and Marcus Peters.
Last question is from Marcus Farkas. Okay. He wants to know why the NFL does not embrace a farm system like Major League Baseball or the NBA. Well, sir, it's because they get it for free. Sadly. It's messed up. Although, you saw, by the way, some XFL players getting looks. PJ Walker really wanted him as Russell Wilson's backup. Carolina signed him. We didn't talk about Carolina. Do you have Carolina on your list? Because I have no freaking clue what they're doing, and I remain totally befuddled. They're like other than finding Temple guys.
Yeah, they're like halfway into a rebuild. Like I think.
Yes.
I like Matt Rule. I think he seems like a pretty smart guy. There is a weird thing happening there where like he's like, yeah, like all the things that teams don't do are the things we want to do. Like we want to get in pads, and it's like, well, the CBA says you can get in pads about half as much as you do now, and coaches were already complaining about not being in pads. So it's like, I think there's going to be a rough first year, but I kind of like what the bigger picture in terms of what they're thinking is there. Because it feels like they are open to value, but they're not like.
The contracts are good. Like Robbie Anderson at 2 years at 20, right? I think I saw that.
Yep.
That's a great deal for Robbie Anderson. The Teddy deal is a great deal. I just don't get it in the context of the team. That's why I just don't quite. I can't believe Robbie Anderson did get more money, by the way.
Yeah.
I guess I think such a good wide receiver draft, but Jesus.
I think they don't want to tank, but they're sort of tanking. I don't really know how to explain it.
You know what? That's a good segue to a winner, a controversial, counterintuitive winner. I love that the Jaguars are clearly tanking. Like, just go for it. We can debate about how it's pretty undeniable, right?
Sure. I don't know why
they're already going to be terrible.
Yes, they're already going to be bad. I still don't know what the Nick Foles trade was. We know he got a restructured contract, but we don't know how much they inherited. But getting a 4th round pick for Foles is great. I can't believe
they got a 4th round pick for him and it didn't have to give it. I thought they were going to have to dump a pick.
Mm-hmm.
Like a Brock Osweiler style.
Yep. I thought that was going to happen with David Johnson too. And look how that worked out for our old friends in Arizona. I don't love the Joe Schobert signing.
That's a bad one. I've got him in front of me.
It's just he's good. I think it's pretty good, but it's just, you don't need to pay $20 million to 2 inside linebackers. It's just not really where you need to spend your money. But they're going to hand the ball to Leonard Fournette a lot in 2020, and they're going to draft a quarterback next year, probably with a new coach and a new GM. But, they're going to have a core of guys that just have to get past this year where they're just a total cap mess.
Do you think Trevor Lawrence is going to look good in the gradient?
Oh,
so much debate. We got to see what they're going to get for Yannick, who's ostensibly a tag and trade. So that'll affect
what would you be comfortable with the Seahawks trading for Yannick?
Because you have to pay him. I mean, it depends on what they pay him, assuming they pay him 2021 or whatever, right? That's kind of, their first is bad, so I guess it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. I don't know, Bill. My view of the Seahawks is generally, and this probably colors our conversation earlier, I am obsessed with they need to maximize Russell Wilson's window. Mm-hmm. So, just do something. So, and honestly, it's not like they're using 1st round picks anyways. So
it's true.
Take it. Give us a winner. I don't want to talk about this.
Winner. Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah.
They always do smart stuff. They didn't bring Michael Pierce. That's fine. But you rebuild your line with Calais Campbell for a late round pick. You sign Michael Brockers. You bring back Jimmy Smith. I think it's 1 year and $3.5 million. Having Jimmy Smith as your 4th cornerback is great. They got a 2nd rounder for Hayden Hurst. They have, I think, 5 picks in the first 3 rounds, and they're 14-2, and coming off of a season where their quarterback was league MVP. They lost Marshall Yanda to retirement. That's not ideal, but they're going to be good for a long time. Even if Lamar Jackson is not the guy he was in 2019, they are going to be set for a while.
I agree. And I should have added when we talked about the Jags that what they got for Calais Campbell dinks them, obviously.
Bummer.
But, I think not a ton to add with the Ravens. I think the one thing I'll say is so they tagged Judon.
Yep.
I would not give him a ton of money personally. So that would influence,
really?
I think. Yeah.
Why?
Dominique Foxworth convinced me. We were talking the other day and, I was like, oh, Matthew Judon's really good. And Dominique pointed out how often he's unblocked and kind of when you dig into his pass rush wins, how few of them are hard fought, so to speak, because of how often they blitz. And he kind of convinced me that his production could be replaced. This is really good stuff. I'm like, Dominique Foxworth said this, so I'm basically just listening to him. I don't know. I also think, by the way, given the nature of the Ravens defense and how often they blitz and the fact that they've invested so much in their secondary, pass rush is not an area where they are best suited to invest a lot of money.
I could see that. But they did not sign Zadarius Smith last year, and Zadarius Smith, whose contract I panned for many of the reasons that Dominique Foxworth brought up, had a enormous season for the Packers.
I would love Matthew Judon on the Seahawks. Trade him to the Seahawks, guys, for nothing. I like Zadarius Smith. I like that sighting. All right, I'm gonna do another winner. I'm gonna stay positive for a little bit. I think the Colts are gonna be really good.
I think they're gonna be a lot better.
They're not my Super Bowl pick or anything, but listen, I think I liked the Buckner signing. I know more than you, but I liked it because of
did I dislike it?
I thought you didn't. I might be wrong. I feel like we talked about it and you didn't. But in any case, I liked it because of the Colts cap space, the way they're built, where they are right now as a franchise. Like if he had been signed for that much on a different team, I don't think I would have liked it as much. I think he's an excellent player. I love the Phillip Rivers deal. So which I haven't got a chance to talk to you about, and I would like to. So, 1 year, $25 million. I've noticed some Colts fans are like not happy about it. I think either they want it. I feel like generally fans really want their quarterback of the future, and they really want their team to like go all in. And this is such a clearly the opposite of that. And, they're picking 13th, which they traded away, obviously. And perhaps they were hoping, let's take a flyer on Jordan Love. And I think it's good that they did this instead. Some of it comes down to whether or not you believe some of Phillip Rivers' decline last year can be pinned on, having to play from behind so much and how horrible the Chargers offensive line was. And I think that was like 80% of it, 20% of it. Like he does not look the same when he throws deep. And obviously a lot of his picks came when he tried to throw deep, but guess what? He doesn't have to anymore. He plays for the Colts. So I love the fit. I just do. I think their offense is going to be really good. They need a wide receiver, but once they get one, I think they could be really good.
I think Paris Campbell is going to be better in year 2 than he was in year 1. So I'm like, totally. I want to see them add a wide receiver, but it's not like, it's like, the Jets where it's like they have nothing. T.Y. Hilton and Paris Campbell could be a pretty good combination. I'm of the volition that Phillip Rivers was behind a terrible line last year with the Chargers where there were just so many injuries. I think it was, so their big 2 offensive linemen were Russell Okung and Mike Pouncey, and those guys didn't play a single snap together on the field in 2019, which is just, he got the worst tackle, probably the second or third worst tackles in football. And he's going to maybe one of the top 5 tackle situations in the league, one of the 5 best offensive lines on the whole in the NFL. That's just an enormous, enormous opportunity. And I think he had to make a lot of throws in desperate situations. And I think he's always going to make some bad decisions. Like Phillip Rivers is going to make some throws that just are wrong. But I think he can be good enough that, he can make a lot of easy completions. They can rely on yards after the catch. They have a bunch of good weapons for him to work with. They have to stay healthy, but I think the Colts are a playoff team. The Buckner thing, the only thing I don't like is that Chris Ballard's been a pretty good drafter. So I do think that I would not want to give up that pick and pay Buckner a ton of money, but I don't think it's like a bad idea. I just don't think it's, the most optimal idea. But I think if they want to try and win now, I think it's a pretty good move. Yeah,
you got to think too with Buckner, they looked at the draft and kind of where they were picking. And all right, give us a loser.
Okay, I'm not going to give you a loser, but I want to give you a not winner.
Okay, let's hear it.
I don't think the Arizona Cardinals have won this offseason.
Ooh, spicy. That's a spicy take,
isn't it?
How can you say that?
Okay, so you go a long way with the DeAndre Hopkins trade. Like just getting out of the David Johnson contract, getting Hopkins for a 2nd round pick is incredible. That is on its own. That is on one side of the scale. Here's the other side of the scale. They gave Larry Fitzgerald $11 million for 1 year when Larry Fitzgerald is charitably washed. I don't want to be like mean about Larry Fitzgerald because he's so good and has been so good for so long, but like he is a guy and he's getting $11 million. The Kenyon Drake tag is better than giving him an extension, but Kenyon Drake is just a guy. Like I know he was better in that offense. They can plug in a running back. They'll be fine. I know not paying a running back a ton of money is something I am not a fan of. Shocking. The Jordan Phillips deal, I don't like. He's a guy who, you watch him on tape, the sack total from last year is not supported by the tape. He had a bunch of sacks where he was just the right guy at the right time. The Bills, who, they would have loved to sign Jordan Phillips. He was a valuable player. We're happy to let him leave. That's not a good sign. Devontae Campbell, maybe one of the 5 worst deals of the offseason, where they give a guy who was on the Falcons for 4 years. You know how bad the Falcons defense has been. $6 million, and they structure it with 4 voidable years to try and create cap space. And they're going to eat like $4 million in dead cap next year for Devontae Campbell, just on principle of like, I wouldn't trust you to manage a checkbook if you were doing that with your salary cap situation. There's so much bad on the other side of the coin. So I think the Hopkins deal makes up for a lot of that, but they kind of land somewhere in the middle.
Yeah. this is going to be one of the most unbalanced teams. The most between the offense and defense. That offense is going to have to put up like 300 points a game.
And they might.
They might. I still think it's a net win just because that trade is so insane. And even if they extend DeAndre as he purportedly wants, I still think it's insane given how little they give up. I agree. I would have liked them to not only make different moves, to do more on the defensive side of the ball. And they're a bit hamstrung. They lost their second round pick in this draft to target sort of that defensive line. I think the secondary could be a little bit better next year, but Peterson's going to start to decline. They need Byron Murphy to take another step forward. And obviously they've got Budda Baker, but I think that front seven still needs a lot. So I'm with you there. All right. I don't want to, we don't have to talk about the DeAndre Hopkins thing anymore. We've talked about that a billion times.
Do you have another winner?
Yes, I do. I think you don't agree with this one, actually. Hold on. Let me pull it up. I'm all over the place. Well, I've got two, and we're kind of running long, so let me know, which one would you prefer that I talk about? You can choose.
Okay.
Philadelphia or New Orleans?
Let's go New Orleans, because I don't agree with New Orleans.
That's the one I knew you wouldn't agree with. Okay. Eagles fans are like, no, I want to hear myself get praised. Okay. I don't know why you didn't like this Emmanuel Sanders signing. I am shocked, Bill. I thought it was great. Lenny apparently disagrees.
Lenny thinks that's fine. Lenny's on my side.
That was an angry bark. Power through this. So, but I'll look at the whole sort of their whole off season.
Okay.
You got Drew Brees on a great deal.
Sure.
What I thought was a great deal, team friendly. Another quarterback who shall not be named. Malcolm Jenkins, I like that deal. 4 years, $32 million. Half of that's guaranteed, so it's a 2-year deal. He's not elite, and obviously he's on the, he's 32 or something or whatever. But for their needs, which is just wanting a box safety, he can do that. I do not like the Andrews Pete deal, obviously. But I love the Emmanuel Sanders deal. I don't understand why it's 2 years, $16 million. It's exactly what they needed for Drew Brees. They don't need a deep threat. They need another, guy who can get open and off of man or find windows. And I think he's really good. I know he's been hurt, and obviously his production has been a little bit, it reflects that he's been hurt. But when he's healthy, I think he's a perfect fit for this offense.
Okay, but he gets hurt. You can't throw that and be like,
but he's healthy now.
He's healthy now because it's the off season, and he's 33 years old. You remember a few years ago?
Has not been hurt.
And 33
I'm hurt right now.
Remember when the Colts had that offseason a few years ago where they signed a bunch of, they signed Andre Johnson and Trent Cole. We were like, oh man, the Colts are just
how old was
so
Andre
deep.
Johnson then?
He was probably 34 would be my guess. And it was perfect fit for what Andrew Luck needs. Why
didn't the Seahawks sign him?
Yeah, he was 34.
There might be some tweets from me being like, "Come on, Seattle, wake up, go get Andre Johnson." I hope that's before I started working at ESPN.
I mean, I sort of see that where it's Sanders who's 33. You have Malcolm Jenkins who I think is 32. Where it's those guys are good, but you kind of are expecting them to be the players they were in years past. And there's a chance they are those guys. And if they are, awesome, great. But there's a chance those guys are also just not what they used to be. And then you're paying those guys premiums to be average or below average players on your roster. I don't think that's likely, but I think that's within the realm of possibility for sure.
So many things are within the realm of possibility these days.
I know, but we have to consider that. And then the Pete deal is for a ton of money.
That was bad. That was bad.
David Onyemata deal I think is fine. I think it's okay, but that's something where I felt like they really wanted to bring a guy back and then paid maybe a little more than they should have. And I mean, with the Sanders thing, we talked about it. This is an incredible class for wide receivers. So why not draft a wide receiver, which you guys have been pretty good at in the past, and use that Sanders money on another edge rusher to add to your rotation, or a better cornerback when your secondary was a mess last year. I mean, they're going to have to hand out big deals to Marshawn Lattimore and Ryan Ramczyk, so they have to save some cap space. But I think the Saints are great, but I think they're probably a little better on paper than they are in reality heading into 2020.
Yeah, I mean, when you're signing skew older, they're definitely riskier. And I think it's not dissimilar from, I think we've had like some of the teams you and I have talked about where I think I'm kind of more, you're taking kind of a longer view and a more pragmatic view. And I'm kind of erring towards the optimistic side of win now. I just want teams to sign good guys. Especially now, right? Because who the heck knows if they're even going to get to practice. So
yes.
Take that, Bill. Take that, Bill. Give us
You're
a
not
loser.
wrong.
Give us a loser.
You want a loser? Let's just keep it simple. I'll ask you the same question. Would you rather me say loser Patriots or loser Lions?
I have the Lions too. Let's talk about the Lions.
Okay.
The Patriots I don't want to talk about because whenever they've signed a quarterback, I think I'll talk about them more in depth. So let's talk about the Lions.
Okay. Can I ask you, what are the Lions doing? What is their overarching plan besides add as many Patriots as possible?
They're like, do you ever watch those True Lives where people become obsessed with a celebrity and then get the worst plastic surgeries to look like them?
Yes.
Like True Life, I want to look like Justin Bieber, and then the guy comes on the screen, you're like, no, you do not look like Justin Bieber. That's kind of how I feel about the Lions. True Life, I want to be the New England Patriots. I'm sorry, Lions fans. I'm sorry. You guys know it. You know. Also, I mean, good Lord. Are there Lions fans out there defending Patricia? Like, who are like, yeah, he's still our guy. Like, they must be furious, right? I don't have my fingers on the pulse of Lions Nation because mercifully they're not angry and in my mentions, but you guys are unhappy, right? Like, you're not stoked. They have to be, yeah.
I mean, I think they're going to be better next year because they're going to get a healthy Matthew Stafford.
It was great last year. He was excellent before he went out.
But,
good Lord.
But I mean, the moves they've made, like the Darius Slay trade for what they got, I don't like. And they ended up using most of the money to sign Desmond Trufant, who has been pretty bad the past few years. And then it's Chase Daniel, who, I mean, I don't know why you had to make Chase Daniel a priority. It's not even like he's going to choose somebody.
King of the bank.
The genius. The offensive. The offensive Darrelle Revis in terms of maximizing his compensation.
What a king. A legend.
And then Danny Shelton, Jamie Collins, Deron Harmon, just Patriots. The Hal Vaitai deal. Whew. I mean, even though it's a 2-year contract, it's still, they're going to give Hal Vaitai as much guaranteed as the Chargers are going to give Brian Bulaga. And one of those guys is a Pro Bowl right tackle. And the other one is a guy who has like 12 NFL games underneath his belt. It's just not.
Yeah. I changed my mind. It's not like True Life. It's kind of like instead of working out, you put on one of those t-shirts that has abs painted on it. That's so a little bit of positivity. I don't dislike, I actually think some of those players are fine or good. I like Danny Shelton. I know, in the past, Snacks has obviously been better than him, but Snacks did regress a bit last year. Danny's of course younger.
That's not an expensive deal either.
Super cheap. I also think Deron Harmon is a nice player and a nice addition, but the Vaitai deal, the Trufant signing,
the Jamie Collins deal where he was like
Jamie Collins, and also apparently everyone hates your coach. Oh my God, you see it was Darius Slay, right? Who?
Yes.
Between that and the Diggs thing, it's just so rough. Tough times in Detroit, which is a shame because like I said, I think Matt Stafford has been playing really well. Okay. I'm just going to go really quick. Let's do a speed round. I'm going to just tell you some teams that we didn't get to that I thought were kind of interesting. Because, there are a lot of teams that you kind of just say, like, either way, I suppose. Right. So I mentioned I like Philadelphia. You're kind of mad on them. I like the Raiders, some of the stuff they did. I already talked about them, though.
Can you talk you talked about Mariota?
No, Mario. No, I'm focused more on like the linebacker signings. Malik Collins, I really like that signing.
Briefly, can I ask you, do you think the Marcus Mariota contract, which is $7.5 million per year, does it make you think the Raiders actually want him to compete with Derek Carr?
I think Derek Carr is going to be good next year. So I think
Carr truther.
Nice. It's a little rich. I think Gruden wants that option.
Sorry, 2 years, 17.6, so almost $9
But how much is
million
guaranteed?
I think 10 or sorry, 8 is guaranteed, I believe.
So yeah. I think Gruden wants that option. I do.
Yeah.
They probably and they could have done more on offense. I mean,
they're fine.
Yeah, it's fine.
Who else?
Okay, moving down. So the Cowboys I put under because on one hand, look, any season when you lose one of the best centers of all time, obviously bad. They didn't get a deal done with Dak Prescott. That's also bad. But you and I have talked about the Amari Cooper. We both thought there was a chance he could walk. The fact that they got him at pretty much just fair cost is a win, I think. HaHa Clinton did at $4 million is like insanely cheap, even though I don't think he's a great player. I think he's an average player. And for Frederick, they re-signed Joel Looney. I imagine he'll be his replacement. They still have one of the Connor McGoverns on their roster. It's so irritating to me. That's 2 Connor McGoverns in the NFL. So there's that. I don't love the Blake Jarwin signing. But yeah, I don't know. I think obviously we've talked about a million times, in a universe in which they don't pay Ezekiel Elliott, they can keep Byron Jones. But by and large, I think not the worst for Dallas.
No, I think it was fine. Obviously I want them to sign Dak at some point, but I think overall, you couldn't have anticipated that Frederick was going to retire. And once you take that out of the equation, I think a totally fine offseason from the Cowboys.
What about you? We never talked about Chicago. They were on my sad face side.
I mean, I don't know. Do you believe Robert Quinn is a superstar like analytics say he is?
No.
Then it's a terrible offseason because the Jimmy Graham deal was atrocious and the Nick Foles deal appears to be a disaster. They are paying Nick Foles like he is a legitimate franchise quarterback when he is an injury prone guy who gets hot one time every 3 years.
I could totally see him getting hot this year, though.
Oh, of course.
Also, he knows. Usually, my eyes roll so far out of my head when I hear the phrase "knows the system" that it takes me an hour to find them, and they're somewhere on the floor having picked up lint. But if there was ever a year to know the system, Bill, it is indeed this year.
That's fair. I absolutely agree with you there. But I mean, Nick Foles doesn't have to be that good for this team to be competitive. And I think if you're just saying anybody but Mitch, you could kind of get me on the Nick Foles bandwagon.
At least they did something, right? There was a universe in which they were not going to do anything.
But they could have just not traded for Nick Foles and then
waited for Cam Newton.
Signed Cam Newton. Just like the Texans could have not traded for David Johnson and then signed Todd Gurley and not traded away DeAndre Hopkins in the process.
Doing nothing. Turns out a good approach. The Vikings, I mean, this was one where when I just kind of was looking at players, I was shocked by the sheer amount of players they lost. Now, that said, they did not have a choice. You know what I mean? Because of cap space and sort of the situation they've gotten to. So, and I also, a lot of these players, I think, yeah, it's fine. Waynes and Rhodes and Mackenzie Allen, they're not players you absolutely have to keep, but I think that's a team that's going to be worse, could be worse next year. And then obviously the Diggs loss, which I've talked about at length. So. Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to get into the Diggs trade again, but I like Michael Pierce as a signing. I think swapping out Linval Joseph for Michael Pierce is fine. I think they're a team that always wants to draft and develop corners. They're going to hit cornerback hard in this draft and hit a second wide receiver as well. So I think they're going to look better after the draft. I think they have a bunch of picks in the first couple rounds. So that's going to help them look more complete than they do right now.
All right. Is there any team you absolutely have to convey your opinion about before we get to the final questions?
After writing 95 grades for free agents? No, I am absolutely. I mean, do you want to say anything about the non-Brady Bucks?
I think they're going to be good.
I do too, but I've been burned by this opinion before.
Really? Because I said you didn't really want to give him an A. Yeah, I do. I kind of want to talk about the Bucks more at length. Because I think it's going to be a really fascinating team. I've talked a little bit about that offense and I think how they have to evolve and the ways in which they might evolve.
Okay. Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Could you see a scenario where they install something between the Tom Brady Patriots offense and the Bruce Arians chuck it downfield Bucks offense, and they struggle for the first 3 weeks of the year, and week 4 Tom Brady is like Byron Leftwich is like in the crowd somewhere without a headset, and Tom Brady's just like literally running like the Patriots offense that he like, he took off Madden during the week. Like that would not shock me.
They're going to have to, right? If they didn't have Chris Godwin, I would say no, and this is going to be really awkward, but I think he is one of the most talented wide receivers in the NFL, and I think he can do pretty much everything. And I think one of the things he does very well is not only, he can separate, unlike any of the New England receivers in recent years, but he's really good in the short game. He's really good at screens. He breaks tackles. So I think he is going to be Tom Brady's best friend, and I think that's going to help them during that transitional period.
One more question about the Bucs, and then we can move on. I'm sorry. How happy do you think OJ Howard was to see Tom Brady come in?
Oh man, how about OJ Howard fantasy owners, the true ride or die owners out there? Congratulations to you guys. What do companies like Ring, Hint, and Tecovas all have in common? They all use NetSuite to accelerate their growth. Successful companies know that in order to grow faster, you must have the right tools. If you want to take your company from 2 million to 10 million, or 10 million to hundreds of millions in revenue, NetSuite by Oracle gives you the tools to turbocharge your growth. With NetSuite, you get a full picture of your business: finance, inventory, HR, customers, and more. It's everything you need to grow, all in one place, right from your phone or computer. NetSuite will give you the visibility and control you need to make the right decisions and grow with confidence. That's why NetSuite customers grow faster than the S&P 500. NetSuite is the world's #1 cloud business system, trusted by more than 19,000 companies. It's the last system you'll ever need. NetSuite. Business grows here. Schedule your free product tour right now and receive your free guide, 6 ways to run a more profitable business, at netsuite.com/Mina. That's netsuite.com/Mina, netsuite.com/MINA.
And now it's time for Dinks and Dunks. I'm getting paid for this, right?
All right, Bill, some questions for you. First question. Why do you think Jameis Winston doesn't have a job?
The answer is not fun. I mean, this is a guy who has multiple allegations of sexual assault on his record.
You really,
Do I think that is
he doesn't have a job? Yeah.
I think that limits his market for sure. And I mean, I think obviously, unfortunately, if he was more talented, he would have a bigger market. But I think there's plenty of teams who would look at him as a possible backup and say, is he really worth this much aggravation? He is someone who drives coaches crazy. And I think when you have first overall picks, typically you will see coaches sort of really look towards signing them to try and rebuild them. Like with Blake Bortles with the Rams, for example, or the Mariota deal with the Raiders. Like, smart coaches really love usually getting really talented players and trying to mold them into something more successful. But like, Jameis went across multiple coaches, he had plenty of weapons to work with. The line was not terrible by any means. Like, I just don't think there's a lot of teams who see him as like someone who's worth the aggravation in terms of possibly building some value. Yeah.
I think he's also like too good to be a backup. Like, if you look at a lot of teams around the NFL that could use him, they're teams with rookie quarterbacks where I don't think they want to introduce the variable that is Jameis Winston. You know what I mean? Like, for example, a team like Washington that signed Kyle Allen to be Dwayne Haskins' backup, they're not bringing Jameis Winston in there.
Who do you think signs Jameis Winston then?
I could see a team like the Jags.
Can I give you a spice?
They would be one of those rookie teams where they wouldn't want to. What were you saying?
Can I give you a spicy option? Dallas Cowboys, who have a quarterback who they are not super in love with right now.
This is a great idea.
It's the one place where I think there would be fans excited to sign Jameis Winston.
I think that makes a lot of weird sense. To be clear, as always said, I think Taylor should sign Dak Prescott to a long-term contract, but it makes sense. Question 2. The Olympics were postponed a year. Bill, if you had 1 year to do nothing, no work, no grades, no podcasts, but prepare for the Olympics, which event would you choose?
Does this include Winter Olympics as well?
No, Summer Olympics.
1 year to prepare. Because I was going to say curling. That's the obvious one, I think. Maybe trampoline.
Is that a Summer Olympic event?
It 100%.
Still? Oh, yeah, it is. Yes,
it was in the past. I think it's a really high risk, high reward situation. Cause like, I'm probably not leaving with all of my limbs intact, but I think it could be fun.
I like volleyball.
I mean, obviously not an option. I would love to get good at curling. Like it really hits the hipster side of me really hard. Just the idea of like being fantastic as a curler, like having that reputation would be awesome.
I feel like I saw a video of someone pretending to curl with their Roomba just now. Some great content being put out right now on the internet. Along those lines, question 3, can you give a content recommendation to our fellow quarantined listeners? Like a show or...
Yeah, I mean, you've talked about Love is Blind on the show, so I don't want to bring up Love is Blind. I will go with Detroiters, which is a sitcom that I'm watching for the second time now. It is from the folks who put together I Think You Should Leave, which is the show I loved the most from last year. If you haven't watched I Think You Should Leave, go to that as well. But a very funny buddy comedy, very sweet, a little bit surreal, but just endlessly rewatchable, always funny, tons of little bits, on Comedy Central. So kind of like you need to have cable to stream it, which is kind of a pain, but a really, really easy watch. Do you have a rec, Mina?
No, I would second Detroiters. That's my friend Zach Kanan actually made that show. Shout out to Zach Kanan.
See, I did not know this. Now
also, I Think You Should Leave. Yeah. By the way, I was just talking about I Think You Should Leave today because the infamous, of course, steering wheel skit. The guy in that, the old guy. Yeah. I have a neighbor who looks exactly like him, and he's always outside doing weird stuff. And every time I see him, I just lose it laughing because I think about him dabbing.
Can I tell you what my my Halloween costume with my partner is going to be this year if we put together Halloween costumes in time? My partner was going to be in the full hot dog outfit from I Think You Should Leave, and I was going to be Zach Kanan in the suit dressed like the hot dog.
Incredible. Question 4. Let's say the Patriots sign Cam Newton. Who's better, them or the Bucs?
Ooh, the Patriots. I just like
coaching and defense.
Yeah, like the Bucs defense is good, by the way. We should not sleep on the Bucs defense. They were 5th by DVOA.
Praise them to no end on this podcast.
But the Patriots have Bill Belichick, and that goes a long way. I don't know what their record's going to be if they actually do run with Jarrett Stidham and Brian Hoyer. I had Nora Princiati, who covers them on my podcast, today, and she said they were going to be 5-11 with that combination of quarterbacks, which is very bold. I would go Patriots. I think an easier division, and I think I really have faith that Cam is an above average quarterback if he can stay healthy.
Speaking of the Bucs, final question, as always, comes from Lenny. Lenny is just wondering. He noticed that Maggie hasn't been featured by Joe Buck, and he wants to know if it's because she just couldn't cut it in the league.
Maggie has a problem where with Lenny does things that would be considered action for play-by-play. Maggie, how would one of my friends dog-sit her and was tweeting about her and described her as like the world's laziest dog. And I was going to reply to her and reply, no, my dog is actually the laziest, until I realized she was talking about my actual dog. Unless you are sitting in one of her 3 desired seats at any one point, or you have food in your hand, she does not move. So it would just be Joe Buck commenting on a dog laying on a couch, on a bed, or in a dog bed, which, what did he say about Randy Moss that time all those years ago?